welcome back to Alan Wall's Photography. I am Alan, and today we're going to be talking about used and abused lenses. So this week I want to talk to you about the whole idea of buying used lenses. I had my fifth or sixth bad experience with a used lens purchase this last week, and I thought I would share with you what I've done over the years in terms of buying used glass, and what I'm going to do from now on, because I've made a ton of mistakes, and you don't need to. And some of them can get very expensive. But let me tell you the story first. About 6 months ago, might have been a little bit longer than that, I was in need of a normal prime, 50 or so millimeter prime. I had one, and I had misplaced it, and I needed one for an upcoming shoot. Now, I don't normally use a 50 millimeter prime for very much. It doesn't fit in great with my usual workflow, but I wanted to get one anyway, and I decided I'd get one used. Now, I'm very lucky. There are two camera shops within about a 45-minute drive of my house. They're the same shop, they're just in different states. And they usually have plenty of good used equipment. And I went and I bought this lens. I had a quick look at it in the shop, and it looked fine. And I took it home and I stuck it on the shelf, planning to do some things to check the lens out. But I didn't get around to it. I got super busy with other stuff, and the lens, which was a Nikon 50 millimeter f1.4G, and I paid right at $300 for it. And it's just been sitting on my shelf. And then this weekend I had a shoot that I needed the lens for. It was actually the reason I got the lens in the first place. So I took it out and I put it on my camera and put it through its paces. And I immediately realized that this lens was forward focusing terribly. Unusable pictures. And I was shooting with the Nikon D850, which has really fantastic autofocus fine tuning, and even setting the camera at -20, which is the maximum amount of back focus you can add, I couldn't get the focus sharp. So basically I had a lens that was utterly useless, because there's no way for me to focus other than crossing my fingers and doing it manually. And this was going to be a shoot where I really wanted to have autofocus. So I tried everything I could think of short of actually taking the thing apart. And that's when I realized that it had a 90-day warranty, which had expired 3-4 months ago. So that's the story that got me thinking about how I could have done things differently, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So presumably every now and again you decide you want to buy a lens. I do. It's more than every now and again, but certainly I'm always looking for interesting new gear. And like everybody else, I want the very best gear that I can buy. But some of the prices these days, especially for first-party lenses, Nikon lenses, and I'm sure it's the same with Canon, are just so crazy expensive that I seldom feel the urge to spend quite that much money. So if you're like me and you decide to look at used lenses, there's several things that you need to be aware of. And these are things I've learned myself one at a time. First off, not all sellers are alike. And you really, really need to pick a good seller. If you're buying a used lens, you absolutely have to do that. There is no advantage to buying a used lens from a dealer with a bad reputation. Any of the online lens dealers that sell used equipment have reviews, and you can read the reviews to your heart's content. And there are some that I think are more reliable and honest than others. You have to remember that if lenses are showing up on the used market, it's because somebody sold it or traded it in. And I don't know how many lenses you trade in, but I don't trade in lenses. I mean, once I buy a lens, the pain is over usually by then, and I'm going to keep that lens because I'm going to need it for something. And if I don't need it for something, I'll give it to somebody at some point. But I generally don't trade them in. So somebody's trading these lenses in, and I don't know if everybody thinks like I do, but what I worry about is the lenses that are getting traded in are the lenses that didn't fulfill the expectations of the person that bought it before you. Now, I'm sure that there are legitimate trade-ins where somebody just wanted to trade up to a nicer piece of gear. I have done that myself before. So that's a possibility, but also bear in mind that there are lenses on the used market that may have taken a tumble or had some issues with autofocus. So pick a place that you absolutely can rely on. I have never heard anything bad said about B&H as a place to buy used lenses. They're just they seem to be a really honest and straightforward company. And they're also a massive company, probably the biggest photo gear company in the world. So they're not looking to nickel and dime you. And I think their prices are fair. They're not great, but they're fair. But the confidence I get with dealing with them is sky high. I have also bought used lenses from, now I won't remember the names, KEH. I bought one lens from them. I bought 3 or 4 lenses from MPB. That's an English company that set up shop here in America recently, or maybe not recently, but they're originally from England. And I bought several lenses from them. I have bought 2 lenses from Adorama through their used section. And I've had several bad experiences. I'm not going to tell you which company the bad experiences were with, but I'll just tell you that none of them were with B&H. So if you have a local shop, there are some real advantages to doing business there. First of all, there's usually not an issue with taking the lens back if it doesn't operate the way you wanted it to. Usually, if you're buying lenses in a shop, you have a relationship with the people there, and they're more likely to be willing to work with you. And also, it gives you the opportunity to try the lens out and inspect it while you're there in the shop before you buy it. So there are real advantages to that. So one thing you really need to be aware of in this day and age is that the prices for used gear, for used lenses, if they're quality lenses, if they're fast primes by a well-known maker, or even if it's a zoom, like one of the lenses we're going to be talking about today, I bought used, was a 2470 from from Nikon f2.8. And the savings over buying a new one are not impressive. I picked 3 lenses at random, 3 lenses that I have and wanted to price out. The first one I looked at was the Nikon AFS 105 f2.8 macro lens, the micro nickel lens. That lens sells new today for $807. Buying it used from MPB, it's $654 for a excellent copy. That's another thing you need to figure out is what do they mean by excellent? I sometimes think that the ratings some of these shops give are pretty random. But I compared these prices at that level. Whatever they said was excellent, that's the price I checked. So $654 for the same lens. So that's only a saving of $150 for a used lens of unknown provenance. At B&H, the same lens was actually $10 cheaper, $645. And eBay, which is a special case altogether, if I discounted the ones that are going to be sold through auction, if I just went with the ones that you could pay cash for right now, they had prices ranging from $520 to $600 for that lens. So they're all in about the same ballpark. eBay scares me to death. I don't think I would ever sell anything on eBay because of the fact that they apparently don't offer any kind of support to sellers. So sellers are getting ripped off all the time. But still buying from eBay just kind of bothers me. I've done it a lot. I've bought a lot of stuff, and I bought lenses from eBay, and I've just about all of my macro enlarger lenses I bought through eBay, and I've been happy with every one of them. I've had nothing but good experiences. But when somebody is selling a lens of this quality, this 105, for $520, where the rest of the market is around $650, it kind of makes me worry a little bit about what kind of shape the lens is actually in. So a bit of caution is probably worth it. If you're going to use eBay, in fact, if you're going to use any online source, make sure you understand what the return policy is. And that includes what the shipping and insurance policy is. That will kill you. If you've got an expensive lens that you're sending back and forth to New York to conduct a piece of business, find out who's paying for the shipping and the insurance, especially if the lens doesn't work out for you and you have to send it back, because it cost me $100 to send my Nikon back to the Nikon factory. $100 for the overnight shipping and insurance on it. So it can get expensive. The other lens I looked at was the AFS 2470 f2.8 VR, one of the Trinity lenses. It's expensive. The new one, the latest version is $1897 new from B&H. You can get it used from MPB for $1674. So a little more than $220 in savings on a almost $2,000 lens. That's not a whole lot. You're really only getting a 20% discount for a lens that's been used. You don't know how long it's been used for, or by who, or how many times it's been sold. So anyway, B&H doesn't have any 2470 VRs in their used department, and that tells you something about the lens. I have one sitting over on my shelf right there, and I'll never get rid of that. That's one of the best lenses I own. Even though I don't use it a lot for the kind of shooting I do, I don't want to sell that lens. Um, so it does kind of interest me to why a lens of that quality would ever show up on the used market. But B&H doesn't have one. eBay has them anywhere from 1,500 to 1,660. So that's a little bit better savings, but you're buying it from eBay. You're buying it from an individual who you know nothing about, and I would worry a little bit about the policies as we talked about. The other lens I looked at was the Nikon AFS 50 millimeter 1.4G, the one that I had problems with. I bought mine for $300. MPB is selling them for $300. B&H is selling them for $320. eBay has them anywhere from $275 to $350. And the lens can be bought brand new for $377 from Nikon. So like I say, you're looking at savings that max out at about 20%. And some of them are less than that. Not much more than 15% savings. So ask yourself, are you willing to save $100 from it, or 77 actually, for the 50 millimeter? Are you willing to save $77 to take a chance on the lens? Or would it be better to wait another couple of weeks, or go do an extra paper delivery round so that you can save up the pennies and get the new lens? I don't know. I know the direction I'm moving in from now on. But anyway, so it's not a great deal. It's not the great deal it used to be, especially not in the early days of eBay when you could get some fantastic bargains. So make up your mind if that really makes sense. And one other thing, if you're thinking about trading in some of your glass for a used piece, and there are companies that love to take your lens in trade. I looked at a bunch of different lenses, and I went to all of the big resellers and got quotes. And the average is about 51% of the price of the lens is what you're going to be offered as in excellent condition as a trade-in. That's terrible. If these things are maintaining 80 to 90% of their value on the resale market, yet the trade-in's worth 50%, they're making a 30 to 40% markup on the deal. So I would really shy away from that. So the savings are worth it. 15% for you is worth it, and you're going to buy a used lens and take a chance. So you're either going to get it online, or you're going to get it at your local shop if you're lucky enough to have one. And the process is a little bit different. Let me tell you what I should do and what I will do from now on. And all the trouble I've ever got in with buying lenses was because I didn't do this. So if you're going to go to your local shop, it's a good idea to make sure they have the used lens you're looking for. My shop is not huge, so I'll call ahead and ask if they've got one. Sometimes they don't, but they'll find one for me. But anyway, when you go in, check the lens visually. This is just one of the little old Nikon 50 millimeter, the old 1.8D. Pretty sure it's what it is. Yeah, 1.8D. It's a lovely little lens, but it's a great lens to kind of show you what I mean by check the lens. Look it over for dings. Remember that it's virtually impossible to crack any plastic or bend any metal on one of these lenses without dropping it. That should be your first warning. I bought a long telephoto lens used from a reputable dealer, and when I got the lens, I gave it a thorough inspection, and I noticed there was a dent, a very subtle dent, but it was enough to where the lens cap wouldn't fit quite properly, right on this piece of metal. And I blew it off. I just thought, well, it's probably nothing. It wasn't 6 months before the autofocus on that camera just quit completely. And I'm convinced now that the lens was dropped. I can't think of any other way that could have happened. But if I'd had my wits about me, I wanted the lens so bad, and it took so long to get it, that when I got it, I didn't want to send it back. And that's what I should have done. I should have said, this lens appears to have been dropped. I need another copy. And I didn't do that. So just look the lens over. You need two tools to take with you. One is a flashlight, just a little LED flashlight. The other is a mallet. Kidding about the mallet. Don't walk into a camera shop with a mallet. So check the glass and use your little flashlight to look at all angles, because if there is a scratch, not that that's a deal breaker necessarily, especially on the front element, but have a good close look and make sure you're not missing anything. Same with the rear element. Shine the light from the side, have a good look around it. Now, the next thing you need to do while you have your flashlight handy, on the back of most of today's lenses, there is that won't focus there. There's a small little lever right there that allows the camera to control the aperture. If you just pull that little lever up, it will open the lens wide open. And then you can take your flashlight and inspect all inside the lens. You can see literally everywhere in there once the aperture is wide open or shut down. There you go. And what you're looking for when you do this is excessive amounts of dust, and you're also looking for fungus. Fungus looks like an explosion of little fine white lines spreading out from some part of the inside of the lens. I've seen several different species of fungus, and they all look a little bit different. But if it looks like there's anything growing inside your lens, don't buy it. You can't get rid of it. It's only going to get worse, and it will get worse. So inspect it, make sure it's not cracked, bent, that the front and rear elements aren't scratched, and that you don't have dust or fungus on the inside. The next thing you need to do, and this is critical, is put the thing on your camera and take a few test shots in the camera shop. Don't use their camera because you're not going to be shooting with it on their camera. So take your camera with you and put it on the camera. Find a place in the shop where there's good lighting, and just take a few snapshots at a couple of different aperture settings. Make sure you've got enough light, and just check to see if the autofocus appears to be working, if the lens is sharp. You can do that in just one or two shots in the shop. So if you don't find anything obviously wrong with the lens, make your purchase. And when you get home, you're going to have to do something that you'll also be doing if you buy your lens online. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But let me go back to you decide to buy a lens, but you're going to get it from an online dealer, which I think is a slightly second best option than going to a brick and mortar place, just because of the comfort of being able to inspect the lens. But you decide to buy it. Make sure you select a good dealer, like I mentioned at the beginning. B&H will never lead you wrong. Adorama, KEH, MPB, they're the big ones, but there are many more of them. And I would go with a place that has volume, that does a lot of used stuff, and you don't hear a lot of negative things about. But either way, find out before you buy the lens what their shipping costs are, who's paying for the shipping and insurance to send you the lens. Make sure it's insured. Make sure a signature is required to deliver it to you, so that the thing can't just be left on your doorstep for somebody to pinch. So know that up front. What is the return period? And when does the period start? When you receive the lens, or when they sell you the lens? Understand what those rules are, because my experience has been the rules are usually pretty good. They give you plenty of time, but they don't extend that. Once your time's up, your time's up. And make sure that you aren't going to be responsible for shipping the thing back. Like I said, it can cost three figures to ship an expensive lens back to the dealer if you decide that it's not what was on offer. So check all of that stuff out first and figure it into your price for the lens. Assume that you will be sending it back, I guess is what I'm saying, even though you probably won't. When you get the lens, unpack it, and what I do is I grab my phone, and if there is so much as a scuff mark on the box, and I ordered something from B&H last year that looked like UPS had kicked it all the way from New York to my house. The box was so battered. I'll just grab my phone and I'll video the box as it arrives. I'll open it and video the whole thing, just so that I have documentary evidence that this was what I got. Unpack the lens and then do just exactly the same thing you would do if you were in the shop. Inspect it thoroughly, front to back, and open up the aperture blades and have a good look inside for fungus and dust. Make sure that the zoom mechanism works if it's a zoom lens. People say you're taking more of a risk buying a zoom lens than a prime, if you're going the used route. I think that's probably true. All of the trouble I have had, with the exception of one prime, has been with zoom lenses. And that's just because they've got more bits inside them. They're more complicated mechanically, and especially if they have VR. That's one thing that's been a real problem in the past with me, is lenses that the VR doesn't work right in a used lens. So anyway, check it out thoroughly when you get it. Put it on your camera, take some test shots. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just slap a speed light on it and take a picture of a bookshelf or a wall or anything with some texture on it. Don't look at the pictures in the camera. Take the pictures into Lightroom or whatever you use and blow them all the way up and look in the corners. If it's a zoom lens, check it at various different focal lengths. Absolutely check the autofocus. And the way we do that is really pretty straightforward. I'm going to take you in the other room and show you how we do that, because I think it's super important. If you if you really want to know whether the lens is going to work for you, you need to check the accuracy of the autofocus. So let's go in there and do that, and then I'll come back in here and finish this thing up. The process for checking your focus, your autofocus on your new lens, is really dead simple. Just put the lens on your camera. Make sure you've got enough light. It's become nighttime while we've been talking, so I don't have nearly enough light. So what I'm going to do is just use a speed light. If you've got one handy, you can use that. You can use LEDs, anything you want, just in order to get decent exposure on the card. I got one of these little focus measuring cards. They just come in a flat card and you fold them up. You don't need this. I like it because it has graduations, but you could do this with anything. You could do it with a ruler held at a 45-degree angle, or just even a line of nails or tacks or something on a flat surface. The idea is we're going to be focusing on the 0 point or on some point on this scale, say on the 6-inch mark of your ruler, and we're going to keep everything else stable, and we're going to allow the autofocus to find that focal point, and then we're going to take the pictures, look at them in Lightroom. We can look at them in the camera too, but we'll get a good look in Lightroom and see how close to this 0 mark our photographs are getting. You'll line it up and focus it right on that 0. Make sure your autofocus is set to single, so that you just have one point. You want this to be as accurate as possible. Also, you want the narrowest or the shallowest depth of field you can get. So open your aperture up as far as it goes. In this case, 1.8. I'm shooting at 1/250th of a second because that's the sync speed of this camera. And yeah, that's it. If you're wide open, your depth of field is going to be really, really shallow. So you want to see exactly what part of the scale is in focus. So that is all there is to checking the autofocus. The lens manufacturers say about, I think it's 3% is considered 3% front to back focus error is within spec for most lenses, and that can be fixed in your camera. It's when it's more than that that you need to know right then and right there and send the lens back. So I'm very very serious about this. That needs to be what you do the day you get the lens. Because if there's a problem, you need to pack it back up in the shipping that they had. You need to get it back to the seller. The longer you wait, the more likely you're going to have problems. One last thing before I go that I want to talk to you about is the situation that happened to me the other day. Is you go through all of this, or you don't go through all of this, and you end up with a bad lens. What do you do with it? Now, I can tell you that I feel strongly about this. I don't think we should turn around and sell this lens. If it's a bad lens, we are stuck with it. If we sell it used, if we sell it on eBay, that just adds to the problems, and it just makes it's got to stop somewhere. Somebody's got to stop that lens. There are two things that I'll do with a bad lens. The first is I'll take it back to where I got it, and I'll trade it back in with those people, but only after telling them exactly what's wrong with the lens. And that's what I did with that 50 1.4. I took it back to the shop that I purchased it from, and I said, "This is the problem. I can't correct the autofocus with the camera, and it's no good to me." And they took the lens as a trade in for 50% of the new price of the lens, which that's standard, as I was telling you earlier, and I'm okay with doing that because I trust this place. I don't think that they will sell that lens, that they'll repair it, which is a pretty big deal. I once tried to repair the autofocus on a 50mm lens. It was an ugly sight. I still have several pieces that I could never figure out where they were supposed to go when I put the lens back together. So, don't hesitate to take it back to where you got it and see if you can get a trade in. If you can't, get the thing fixed. And if you don't want to get the thing fixed, give it away to somebody who doesn't have any lens. But please don't sell it as if it wasn't broken, because I'll I'll end up buying it. If you sell a broken lens, guaranteed I'll be the one that ends up buying it, and you wouldn't want to do that to me. Sorry about all the rambling. I didn't mean to talk quite that much, but this stuff's important. Don't get sucked into the hype on these used deals, especially when you're trading stuff in. But I wish you luck. Tell me what lens you're looking for. I might have one, and I'll sell it to you at a great price. All right, I will see you in a few days. It's cold and nasty down here, but I definitely need to get out and do some videos. So we'll do that. I'll see you again in a few days. Have a good one. Take care. Bye.